A single mother who scraped by selling flowers on the street ended up marrying the man with the candy apple cart, never dreaming he was a billionaire hiding in plain sight. From that day on, nothing in her life was ever the same. Before diving into their story, say in the comments which city you're reading from. And when you reach the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy. There are days when life collapses all at once. For Benjamin Hayes, that day was a wet, gray Tuesday in October, when he walked into his own office and saw his fiancée, Victoria, kissing his best friend. The betrayal wasn't even the worst of it. The worst part came minutes later, when he plugged a forgotten flash drive into her computer and found messages and documents detailing how she planned their wedding around one goal: marry him, get half of his $3 billion fortune, and disappear. Benjamin Hayes, self-made tech magnate, Forbes cover, admired, feared, envied, the man everyone called a genius. And now an idiot in love who had almost handed half his life to a woman who only loved his bank account. That same night he did the most reckless thing he'd ever done. He called his lawyer, called off the wedding, handed control of the company to his most trusted partner, and vanished. No announcement. No public statement. No clues. 3 weeks later, Benjamin Hayes no longer existed in Seattle. In Austin, Texas, he was just Ben, an ordinary guy in worn jeans and a cheap t-shirt, pushing a wooden cart down the street, selling candy apples. Fresh candy apples. Crunchy and sweet. He shouted at the corner of 6th Avenue, trying and failing to imitate the street vendors he'd seen in movies. People passed without looking. A few snickered. Some turned away in disdain. He learned quickly that being invisible was both freeing and brutal. For the first time, no one asked him for favors. No one tried to impress him. No one pretended to like him. And no one, absolutely no one, seemed interested in his precious apples. "You're doing it wrong," a child's voice announced behind him. Ben turned. A girl of about 8 stood there, brown curls in 2 braids, bright eyes, Spider-Man backpack, taking him in with the blunt honesty only kids possess. "Excuse me." Ben blinked. "You're yelling too much," she said. "You sound desperate. Nobody buys from desperate people. My mom says a good seller makes the customer feel like they're doing him a favor, not the other way around." An 8-year-old had just given a sales lecture to a billionaire. He didn't know whether to laugh or feel offended. "And how old are you?" he asked, folding his arms. 8.5, she corrected. "And I've helped my mom sell more flowers than you've sold apples in your whole life." Ben let out a real laugh for the first time in weeks. "All right, sales expert. What's your name?" "Sophie. And yours?" "Ben." "Ben what?" She frowned, suspicious. "Everyone has a last name. Mine got lost along the way," he said, shrugging. She rolled her eyes but smiled, then reached into the cart without asking, grabbed an apple and took a huge bite. "Hey, you have to pay for that," Ben protested. "I'm testing the product," she said calmly. "If it's good, I'll bring my mom. If it's bad, you'll owe me emotional damages for making me eat a terrible apple." This girl was impossible. And hilarious. She chewed slowly as if tasting a rare wine. After a few seconds she nodded. 7.5 out of 10. "The caramel's good, but you use too many peanuts. Some people are allergic, you know." "Thanks for the review, Junior Gordon Ramsay," Ben said dryly. "You're welcome. Now give me another one without peanuts." "Sophie." A woman's voice cut through the street. Ben looked up. A woman was hurrying toward them, brown hair flying, cheeks flushed, a flowered apron over a white blouse and jeans, a heavy basket of flowers on her arm. Even from a distance he could see she was upset. "Sophie Marie Carter, I told you to wait for me at the flower shop." She stopped in front of them, breathless, and grabbed her daughter's arm. "How many times do I have to say you can't go around talking to strangers?" "But Mom, he's not a stranger. He's Ben, the apple guy who doesn't know how to sell." Ben smiled. Her mother did not. She turned to him with a look so cool and sharp, he felt as if he were being cross-examined. "I'm sorry if my daughter bothered you," she said formally. "She didn't bother me," Ben replied. "Actually, she gave me a few solid tips." The woman narrowed her eyes, weighing him. She looked from the cart to his face, deciding if he was dangerous or simply incompetent. "Sophie, we're leaving." But I haven't finished my apple. And you didn't pay for it, Sophie argued, offended. I was testing it. Her mother sighed, reached into her pocket, pulled out 5 crumpled dollars, and pressed them into Ben's hand harder than necessary. Here. For the apple. And sorry for the trouble. Ben held the money, but before he could say anything, she was already pulling Sophie away.
Bye, Ben.
Sophie waved, caramel in her teeth. Ben waved back, the $5 bill still in his hand. He watched them disappear around the corner, something unfamiliar tugging in his chest. Curiosity. Who was that wary woman and her impossible daughter? And why, for the first time in weeks, was he smiling without forcing it? He slipped the 5 into his pocket like it was something precious and went back to his cart. Somehow the apples felt lighter, and the loneliness a little less heavy. The next morning he woke in the tiny $600 apartment he'd rented and looked around with a strange mix of disbelief and quiet satisfaction. The place was roughly the size of the closet in his old Seattle mansion. The fridge growled like an angry animal. The shower was either ice water or lava. But it was his. Or rather it was Ben's, the apple seller's. He prepped the cart with unusual care. Fewer peanuts. Slightly thicker caramel. Sophie's recommendations. And for the first time, he caught himself hoping to see the girl with the braids again. By 10, he was at his usual spot on 6th Avenue, calling out with a little less desperation and a little more confidence. Caramel apples made with care. And not too many peanuts. 2 older women stopped and bought 3. A tourist couple snapped a picture with the cart. In 2 hours he sold more than he had all week. Maybe that kid really knew what she was talking about. See? I told you you were doing it wrong. Ben turned. Sophie stood there with the same Spider-Man backpack, now wearing a red hoodie with floppy bunny ears and a lollipop in her mouth. You again, he said, feigning shock. Don't tell me you came to test more products for free. Today I brought money. She proudly showed a wrinkled dollar. But only if the apple has no peanuts. No peanuts. Just like the harshest food critic in Austin requested. She let out a sharp little laugh and snatched the apple he'd prepared specially without peanuts. 1 bite and her eyes widened. 9 out of 10. Now we're talking. Only 9? What do I need for a 10? Edible glitter. She was completely serious. Everything's better with glitter. Ben laughed out loud. Unreal. And your mom? She knows you're back here with the strange apple man. She's at the flower shop. Thursdays are big delivery days. She lets me play in the square as long as I stay close. Sophie took another huge bite. And you're not strange. Strange is the hot dog guy over there who talks to himself.
Ben glanced over.
Sure enough, the hot dog vendor was muttering as he set up his stand. Fair point. My mom still thinks you're suspicious though, Sophie added, mouthful. Me. She says. Any man selling apples on the street who won't say his last name must be running from something. Like a crazy ex-wife. Or loan sharks. Ben nearly choked on his own coffee. Your mother said that? She says stuff like that all the time. She's super protective. She doesn't trust anybody. Once this really handsome guy asked her out, and she said he had to be a scammer because nobody that handsome is single for no reason. And what happened? He was married. Sophie shrugged. Mom has a radar for fake people. It never fails. A chill slid down Ben's spine. If her mother had a radar for lies, he was in trouble. Sophie. The same firm voice as before cut across the square. Ben turned. Sophie's mother was walking toward them again. This time without the flower basket, but with the same disapproving set to her mouth. Simple white t-shirt, jeans, worn sneakers, hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Even dressed that plainly, she was beautiful enough that he forgot to breathe for 2 seconds. Good morning, he tried. She ignored the greeting and focused on Sophie. You promised you'd stay in the square. This is not the square. Technically, it's 50 meters from the square. That still counts. Sophie Marie Carter, don't start. Sophie rolled her eyes but obeyed, stepping closer. Her mother turned to Ben. Up close, he saw that her brown eyes were flecked with gold, and heavy with exhaustion and caution. Look, I don't want to be rude, but could you stop giving free food to my daughter? She already knows she can get what she wants with charm. I'm trying to teach her responsibility. She paid today, Ben said, nodding at the crumpled dollar on the cart. Honest transaction. The woman eyed the bill, then Sophie, still munching her apple. Even so, you can't bother people while they're working, she told Sophie. I wasn't bothering him. I was doing sales consulting.
Ben left.
Her mother didn't. Sorry again, she said, but now she just sounded tired. Sophie, let's go. Wait, Sophie turned back. What is your real last name? Sophie, her mother hissed, mortified.
Ben hesitated.
For a heartbeat, he considered the truth. Then he looked at this wary woman who worked herself to the bone and shielded her daughter like a lioness. If she learned who he really was, the way she saw him would change instantly. He'd be a walking withdrawal slip again. Miller, he lied. Ben Miller. She studied him as if searching for a crack. Then gave a short nod. Nice to meet you, Ben Miller.
I'm Rachel.
Rachel Carter. Rachel. Finally a name. Nice to meet you, Rachel. Now that we're properly introduced, she said dryly, please stop charming my daughter with sugar. She's already hyperactive without outside help. I'll try, he said, smiling. But your daughter is very persuasive. I know. Believe me, I know. Rachel took Sophie's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We have deliveries.
Bye, Ben.
Next week I'm bringing my grandma to meet you. She'll love you. Ben watched them go. Rachel glanced back once. Their eyes met, sharp and assessing. Ben Miller, she said, tasting the name. If that really is your name. Then she turned and left, and he was left with a tightness in his chest and the certainty that Rachel Carter would be much harder to fool than he'd expected. He picked up Sophie's crumpled dollar, still on the cart, and thought that maybe living as Ben Miller was the best and worst decision he'd ever made. A week passed, and he couldn't get Rachel out of his mind. Not just because she was beautiful. That was obvious. But because she looked at him like she could see through any mask he put on. He'd already mapped her routine. Rachel opened the flower shop at 8. Sophie left for school at 7:30. On Thursdays and Fridays with no afternoon classes, Sophie played in the square while Rachel worked. And always, without fail, Sophie found a reason to swing by the apple cart. That Friday, she appeared in a yellow dress with white polka dots and a headband with bobbing bee antennae. Costume day at school, she explained, grabbing an apple without asking. Ben had already set one aside for her. I'm a queen bee. But the teacher said queen bees don't wear pink sneakers, so technically I'm a rebel queen bee. Far more interesting, Ben said, accepting the now traditional crumpled dollar. You should make bee-shaped apples. You'd sell a ton. I barely manage round. Bees might be above my pay grade. Excuses. She pointed the apple like a wand. My mom says whoever doesn't take risks doesn't earn rewards. Your mom has a saying for everything, doesn't she? Oh, you have no idea. Last week I forgot my homework and she said, Sophie, laziness is misery's cousin. I don't even know what that means, but it sounded very dramatic.
Ben chuckled.
And speaking of your mom, where is she today? Helping a nightmare customer who wants peach-colored flowers but hates real peaches. Only the color. But it can't be too orange because orange reminds her of Halloween and she hates Halloween. Sophie rolled her eyes. Complicated people give me a headache. Welcome to the business world. That's why I sell apples. That's why I'm going to be an astronaut. No difficult customers in space. Before he could answer, a warm, booming voice sounded behind him. So, you're the famous apple man who enchanted my granddaughter. Ben turned to see a woman around 70, gray hair cut short, red-framed glasses, smile taking up half her face. Jeans, floral blouse, white sneakers, comfortable and lively. Next to her stood Rachel, arms crossed, suspicion firmly in place. Grandma Helen. Sophie ran into her arms. Hi, my little coconut candy, Helen said. Then turned that curious gaze on Ben. So, you must be Ben Miller. Yes, Ma, he caught himself. Yes. Nice to meet you. She shook his hand with surprising strength. Helen Carter. And don't ma'am me. Makes me feel ancient. Helen. Or Grandma Helen if you like. Everyone calls me that. Mom, stop, Rachel muttered, half embarrassed, half resigned. Stop what? Being sociable. Helen picked up an apple, examining it like it was jewelry. Sophie won't shut up about you. Grandma, Ben makes the best apples.
Ben is folyni.
Ben doesn't have a real last name. Ben almost choked. Mom! Rachel gasped. What? She said it, Helen replied innocently. Kids don't lie. They just repeat what they hear. I didn't say it like that, Rachel grumbled, face flushing. Walls have ears. And Sophie hears like a bat. Helen bit into the apple. Her eyes lit up. Oh, this is delicious. Rachel, you have to try this. I don't want to, Rachel snapped. I'm not eating caramel at 9 in the morning. Technically it's 9:15, Sophie supplied.
Ben vágyt. Amused.
3 generations of Carter women, each stubborn in her own way. Helen pulled out a $5 bill. Give me 3 apples, 1 for me, 1 for Sophie, and 1 for my grumpy daughter. I'm not grumpy, Rachel protested. Yes, you are. You haven't smiled since 2020, Sophie said solemnly. Sophie. It's true. The last time I saw you really laugh was when that dog stole the bride's bouquet at church, Helen said, already laughing. Remember? Flowers in his mouth, bride chasing him in that huge dress? Straight out of a movie. Rachel covered her face. Ben handed over 3 apples. Helen gave one to Sophie and thrust the other at Rachel. Mom, I don't want it. Take it, dear. Or he'll think you don't like him. I don't have to like him. He's an apple seller my daughter insists on visiting every day. And what's wrong with that? He seems like a good man. I can tell. You met him 2 minutes ago. Mother's instinct never fails, Helen said, winking at Ben. She's always like this. Suspicious. Her last boyfriend was 4 years ago. She broke up with him because she thought he blinked too much. Mom! I broke up with him because he was immature, Rachel hissed. He was 26. Every 26-year-old man is immature. Ben finally gave up and laughed. Rachel shot him a look equal parts anger and embarrassment. Sorry, he said, trying to sober up. I don't mean to laugh. Laugh all you want, Helen replied cheerfully. This family's a circus. Better accept it early. Mom, he's not part of the family. Yet, Helen said. Rachel snatched the apple, defeated. There. I took it. Happy. Very. Now take a bite. I'm not going to. Rachel and Carter, you are making a scene in front of half the town. People were definitely watching. Rachel sighed, took a tentative bite and froze. Wow, she whispered despite herself. This is really good. Thank you, Ben said, unable to hide his grin. Realizing she'd just given him a compliment, Rachel quickly restored her serious mask. I still think you're suspicious. I know, he answered. And this time he was the one smiling for real. Helen watched them with amused curiosity, while Sophie devoured her apple, the antennae bobbing, smiling like she understood much more than she said. Maybe she did. Over the next days something subtle shifted. Rachel still watched him like a potential threat, but now she stopped to chat. Not much, just enough to be polite. Or so she told herself. On a Tuesday she appeared at his cart with a cardboard box full of wilted flowers. Morning, she said flatly. Morning, Ben replied, surprised. She'd never approached of her own accord before. Sophie forgot her backpack and went looking for it. She hasn't come back. You seen her? He glanced around. No. Not today. Rachel sighed and set the box down. Great. Now I'll have to search the square. Want me to keep an eye out? He offered. If she shows up, I'll tell her to wait here. She studied him, uncertain. You do that. Of course. It's not like I'm overwhelmed with customers. She actually almost smiled. Fine. If she comes, send her straight to the shop. And no free apples, she's had too much sugar this week. Understood. Nos sugeribrives. She rolled her eyes, but he was sure he saw her mouth twitch before she hurried off. 15 minutes later, Sophie came running, backpack hanging sideways, hair a mess. Ben. Where's my mom? She went looking for you. She was worried. Oh no. Sophie groaned. I'm getting the responsibility speech again. Last time it lasted 40 minutes. 40. I counted. He smothered a laugh. Maybe if you stopped forgetting things, You sound like my teacher, she complained. And she sounds like my mom. Everybody sounds like someone who wants to lecture me. Welcome to life. Sophie flopped onto the curb and started drawing circles in the dust with a stick. You know what's boring? Everyone worrying about me all the time. Mom, grandma, teacher. Like I'm going to explode if I'm alone for 5 minutes. Ben sat beside her, adjusting the cheap straw hat he'd bought to look more like a vendor. They worry because they love you, he said. People who love you always worry. Exhausting. She sighed. Mom doesn't even date because of me. She thinks every man is dangerous or wants something. His chest tightened. Maybe she's just being careful. Careful is one thing. Paranoid is another. Sophie turned to him, gaze too sharp for her age. Are you afraid of getting hurt, Ben? The question hit him like a slap. Why would you think that? Because you never talk about your family, or friends, or where you came from. It's like you just appeared. She tilted her head. My science teacher says nothing comes from nowhere. So what's your origin? He took a long breath. It's complicated. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain. Because sometimes it really is true. She studied him for a moment, then shrugged. Okay, I won't push. But just so you know, secrets always show up. My mom found out I failed a math test even though I hid the paper at the bottom of my backpack. Moms have superpowers.
Ben left weakly.
Noted. Rachel came running up at that moment, face flushed. Sophie, I told you to wait for me. Sorry. I came back for my backpack, but you were gone, so I came straight here 'cause I knew you'd look here. Rachel exhaled, trying to calm down. One day you're going to give me a heart attack. No, I'm not. You're strong like a superhero. Grandma says so. Rachel rubbed her face and turned to Ben. Thank you for staying with her. It was nothing. We were just talking about secrets, Sophie said. Rachel's eyes narrowed. What secrets? Mine, Ben cut in quickly. She wanted the apple recipe. I told her it's a family secret. Sophie looked confused for a second before catching his hint. Oh, right. The secret recipe. She brightened. Ben said if I tell anyone, the apple loses its magic. Rachel looked doubtful, but she was too drained to push it. Come on, we have wedding arrangements to finish. But I didn't get an apple. You ate 3 this week. Enough. Mom, Sophie. The girl pouted but obeyed. As they left, she leaned toward Ben and whispered, Thanks for not telling. He winked. Rachel watched the exchange with that familiar suspicion but said nothing as she led Sophie away. He stood there, the now familiar tightness in his chest stronger than ever. He liked them. He liked the impossible kid and the guarded mother. He liked being just Ben the apple seller, not Benjamin Hayes the lonely billionaire. But how long could that last? He was about to turn back to his cart when he heard a familiar engine growl. A black SUV pulled up at the corner. The window lowered and Derek, his personal assistant from Seattle, leaned out in a suit and dark glasses. Mr. Hayes, we need to talk. Ben's heartbeat spiked. He glanced quickly. Rachel and Sophie were already out of sight. He strode to the car, anger simmering. What are you doing here? Your partner is nervous, Derek said. You've been gone for weeks. There are meetings, contracts. You can't just disappear. I can do whatever I want. The press is asking questions. And Victoria is giving interviews saying you left her at the altar. Ben's fists clenched. I didn't leave anyone. I found out she was a liar. I know, Derek said quietly. But the public doesn't. You need to come back and control the narrative before she destroys your reputation. Ben looked back at the cart, the quiet square, the distant flower shop. I'm not going back. Mr. Hayes. Not now, Derek. I just need more time. Derek sighed. How much? I don't know. Ben raked a hand through his hair. Just leave me alone for a few more weeks. Please. Derek studied him, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. But if things get worse, I'm coming to drag you back. Fair enough. The SUV pulled away, leaving Ben alone on the corner, heart pounding, acutely aware that the fragile world he built in Austin could crumble at any moment. He barely slept that night. It wasn't fear of being found. It was fear of losing what he was slowly building. The routine, the simple days, Sophie's visits, and the rare small moments when Rachel's guard slipped and she almost smiled. The next morning, he was so distracted he didn't even notice Sophie until she clapped loudly in front of his face. Earth to Ben. Are you still on this planet? Or did you warp to another galaxy? He blinked back to reality.
Sorry.
I was thinking. About what? Apples with glitter. Not exactly. She hopped onto the bench beside the cart, swinging her legs. You look like someone who fought with someone. Was it your girlfriend? I don't have a girlfriend. Why not? She asked, genuinely puzzled. You're handsome. You make good apples. And you're not boring. That's already more than most people. He laughed despite himself. Thanks for the review. You're welcome. So why are you sad? Who said I'm sad? Your eyes. She pointed at them. My art teacher says eyes are the windows to the soul. Yours have the curtains closed today. This kid. Let's say I'm dealing with some complicated things, he said. Hard decisions, she guessed. Yeah, that. She thought for a second. My mom says hard decisions get easy when you know what really matters. The problem is figuring out what matters. He stared at her, impressed. Your mom's very wise. She is. But don't tell her I said that, or she'll get impossible. At that moment, Rachel appeared, carrying a big vase of sunflowers. She stopped when she saw Sophie perched by the cart and sighed. Sophie, you promised you'd help in the shop today. I was helping. Then I finished watering the plants and came to give emotional support to Ben. Emotional support? Rachel echoed. He has soul curtains closed, Sophie explained. Rachel looked at Ben. What does that mean? That I'm having a rough day, he admitted, embarrassed. Rachel set the vase down and folded her arms. And why is my daughter involved in your rough day? Because she decided to offer free life coaching, he said. What? I was just being nice, Sophie protested. You always say we should be nice to people. Being nice doesn't mean dragging yourself into other people's problems, Rachel replied. Back to the shop. Now. Sophie rolled her eyes but slid off the bench. Remember what I said, she told Ben as she left. Figure out what matters. Rachel lingered, clearly torn between leaving and saying something. I'm sorry, he said. Didn't mean to drag Sophie into my drama. You don't need to apologize. She has a talent for jumping into things she shouldn't. She hesitated, then asked, Are you okay? The genuine concern in her voice threw him. I'm dealing with some things from the past, he said. Nothing serious. She studied him, eyes seeming to look straight through his layers. You don't have to tell your life story to everyone, she said quietly. But you also don't have to carry everything alone. She lifted a shoulder. Unsolicited advice from someone who learned that the hard way. His throat tightened. Thank you. She picked up the vase and started to walk away, then stopped.
Ben.
Yes. Sophie's right. You look like someone who could use a friend. She bit her lip, fighting herself. If you want, we could grab coffee after I close the shop. There's a place on the corner. You're inviting me for coffee, he blurted. I'm offering adult conversation so you stop venting to my 8-year-old, she corrected, flushing. But if you don't want, I do, he interrupted too quickly. Coffee would be great. She looked relieved and tried to hide it with a tiny smile. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. I won't. She walked off, the vase suddenly looking heavier than it was. He stayed there processing. Rachel Carter, who'd spent weeks treating him like a possible criminal, had just invited him for coffee. He should be cautious, thinking of risks. Instead, he was grinning like a teenager. At exactly 6, he walked into the little cafe. Wood tables, the smell of fresh coffee, cozy and warm. Rachel was already at a window table, nervously folding and refolding a napkin. Same simple jeans and t-shirt, but her hair was loose, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. His heart stuttered. Hi, he said, sitting opposite her. She pushed a cup toward him. Espresso. Hope you like it. Perfect. Thanks. Silence hovered while they both searched for a starting point. So, Rachel said finally, Sophie made me promise I wouldn't grill you about where you came from or why you're selling apples on the street. He laughed. She made you promise that? She did. Said everybody deserves a fresh start, and I need to stop being so suspicious. Rachel took a sip of coffee. 8 years old and she already sounds like a therapist. She's special, he agreed. She is. And she's also why I don't trust people easily. Rachel looked out the window. When you're a single mom, you learn fast you have to protect your kid from everything and everyone. Because if you don't, no one will. What happened? He asked gently. Sophie's father left the moment he found out I was pregnant, she said, voice flat. Said he wasn't ready for responsibilities. She gave a humorless laugh. Funny how men always know they're not ready for kids, but never think of that part beforehand. He felt a stab of guilt he couldn't quite explain.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. Best thing he ever did. Sophie deserves someone who wants to be there. And I learned it's better to be alone than with someone only half present. That's why you don't trust me, he said quietly. It's nothing personal. She met his eyes. I just learned to be careful. I understand. She smiled then, really smiled, walls down for a second. But Sophie likes you. And she has a good instinct for people. So maybe I'm wrong about you. The weight of his lie crashed down. He wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to say I'm Benjamin Hayes. But he knew the moment he did, everything between them would change. So he only smiled back. Thank you for giving me a chance. Sitting there with her while the sun went down over Austin, he felt more real than he had in years. After that afternoon, everything between them shifted a notch. Nothing dramatic. Just details. Rachel lingered longer at the cart. Her smiles came easier. Ben counted the hours until he saw her again. On slow days he helped with flower deliveries. Sophie thought it was hilarious. You look like a giant bear holding daisies, she cackled while he juggled 3 arrangements. Thank you for the vote of confidence, he muttered. Rachel laughed too, and the sound erased any embarrassment. One sunny Thursday, Helen burst into the shop as he and Rachel were arranging vases in the window. She had a shopping bag in one hand and mischief in her eyes. News family, she declared, dropping the bag on the counter.
Grandma.
Sophie ran to hug her. Hello, my gorgeous girl. Helen kissed her forehead, then grinned at Ben. And hello, Ben. Becoming an official employee, are we? Just helping when I can, he said. Good, Helen said, settling into a chair. Because I need to talk to all of you. Rachel frowned. Mom, what now? Nothing bad, Helen said. On the contrary. She pulled an envelope from her purse. My 75th birthday is coming. 3 weeks from now. I know, Mom. We're planning a party. I know you are, and I'm grateful. But there's something I want more than a party. Helen looked straight at Rachel. I want to see my daughter happy. Married. With someone who truly values her. Mom, don't start, Rachel warned. I'm not starting. I'm just stating the wish of an old lady who wants to see her child find real love before she leaves this world. You're not leaving anywhere, Rachel protested. You're healthier than half my customers. Life is short, my daughter. And you've spent the last few years hiding behind work and Sophie. It's time you lived, too. I am living. You're surviving. Different things. Helen sighed. That's why I've decided something. I'm going to start introducing suitors. What? Rachel went pale. Doris's son is single. So is George's nephew. And the veterinarian who treated my cat last month. He's divorced but seems decent. Mom, no. Yes. Unless you show up with someone at my party. Silence hit the shop like a wave. Sophie stared wide-eyed. Rachel looked like she might faint. Ben's heart started racing. Helen stood, grabbed her bag and headed to the door. 3 weeks, Rachel. Either you bring someone, or I take over your love life. She left to the sound of stunned silence. Rachel buried her face in her hands. She can't be serious. She's very serious, Sophie said. Remember when she swore she'd learn computers? Now she has a YouTube channel. A what? Ben asked. Knitting and old lady gossip, Sophie replied. She has 300 subscribers. Rachel cracked a reluctant smile, then groaned. This is a nightmare. Ben's mind was racing. Helen wanted Rachel married. Had given a deadline. 3 weeks. He couldn't stand the idea of Rachel being pushed into dates with strangers picked by her mother. Not when he was right there. Before he could overthink it, the words slipped out. I can help. Rachel lifted her head. How? Marry me, he said. The room froze. Sophie dropped her scissors. Rachel blinked at him like she'd misheard. What? Marry me, he repeated. Fake. Just until your mom's party. We pretend to be engaged for 3 weeks. Then we break it off and she stops trying to set you up. Rachel stared as if he'd grown a second head. Are you out of your mind? Probably, he admitted. But it makes sense. She wants you with someone serious. I show up as your fiancé. We put on a good show at the party. Then we quietly end it. No real commitment. No strings. This is a terrible idea in so many ways I don't know where to begin, Rachel said, red to the ears. Do you have a better one? He asked. She opened her mouth, closed it again. No. But that doesn't mean I'm pretending to be engaged to an apple seller I've known for a few weeks. Why not? Your mom already likes me. Sophie approves. And you said yourself I seem like a good person. I said maybe I was wrong about you. That's not the same thing. Sophie, who'd been silent, finally chimed in. I think it's a great idea. Sophie. Rachel spun around. What? It's perfect. Grandma's happy you don't have to date that weird vet who smells like wet dog, and Ben helps us. Everybody wins. Nobody wins, Sophie. This is lying. Technically, surprise parties are lies too, Sophie pointed out. And you've thrown 3 for Grandma. Rachel looked toward the ceiling, clearly begging for patience. Ben took a step closer. Rachel, look at me. She did reluctantly. It's just an act. 3 weeks. I promise I won't complicate things. You've already done so much for me, letting me hang around, giving me a chance. Let me do something for you. She held his gaze, inner conflict plain in her eyes. Fear, doubt, and a flicker of hope. Finally, she exhaled. You're really serious? Absolutely. Fine, she said. We'll do it. But there are rules. A lot of rules. Ben smiled in relief. As many as you want. Sophie hooped so loudly the vases rattled, jumping around the shop. Ben had no idea whether he'd just made the best decision of his life, or the worst. Probably both. The next morning Rachel showed up at his cart with a notebook, 3 colored pens, and the expression of a teacher about to give a final exam. Morning, he said cautiously. Sit, she ordered, pointing at the bench. He sat. She opened the notebook to a page filled with neat handwriting. Rules, she announced. You're agreeing to all of them or this ends now.
I'm listening.
First, no exaggerated public affection. We can hold hands. Maybe a quick hug. Nothing more. Okay. Second, you are not sleeping at my house. Our lives stay separate. Fair. Third, Sophie cannot know this is fake. He frowned. Why? She already. Exactly. And she can't lie. If my mother asks a direct question, Sophie will crumble in 3 seconds. Rachel sighed. We need to convince her it's real. At least until the party's over. He hadn't considered that. Won't that confuse her? Probably. But it's better than Mom finding out and having a meltdown. She scribbled another line. Fourth, when this ends we break up in a civil way. No drama. Neither of us gets to be the villain. Agreed. She kept going. They couldn't tell anyone besides Sophie at first. Ben needed to learn basic details of her life. They'd have dinner with Helen at least twice a week so she could observe them. And the most brutal rule. When it's over, we go back to being just acquaintances. Just acquaintances? He repeated, something sinking in his chest. Yes. It's cleaner. Less confusion. He should have felt relieved by such clear boundaries. Instead, he felt oddly disappointed. I agree, he said anyway. Great. She closed the notebook. Now come with me. We have to talk to Sophie. I need her to be convincing. Mom's coming to the shop this afternoon. He followed her back. Sophie was arranging tulips when they walked in. Her eyes lit up. So? Are you actually doing it? Sophie, sit, Rachel said. The girl sat, legs swinging. Ben and I talked. Rachel began carefully. And we decided maybe this isn't just pretending. What do you mean? Sophie asked. I mean we're going to try for real. Like actually date. The words sounded awkward, but Rachel's face stayed serious. Really? Sophie's eyes widened. You're really dating? Ben put a hand on Rachel's shoulder, trying to look natural. Yeah. We figured out we already like each other, so why not? Sophie sat silent for 3 seconds, then exploded in a grin. I knew it. I knew you'd end up together. Grandma's going to flip. It's new, Rachel warned. So take it slow. Don't tell everyone yet, just Grandma. Deal, Sophie said. She's gonna be over the moon. Not literally. Emotionally. Ben and Rachel swapped a quick, nervous look. They had just stepped into deeper water than they'd planned. That afternoon, Helen arrived at the shop with a basket of homemade cookies. She barely got through the door before Sophie blurted, Grandma, Mom is dating. Helen almost dropped the basket. What? Rachel turned crimson. Sophie, it's true. She and Ben are for real now, Sophie insisted. Helen's gaze shot to Ben, who had just come in carrying potting soil. His eyes widened under the scrutiny. Is this true, Rachel? Helen asked. Rachel hesitated, but Ben stepped forward and without thinking took her hand. It was cold and shaking, but she didn't pull away. It's true, he said quietly. I know it's recent, but your daughter is special. And I'd really like your blessing. Helen pressed both hands to her chest. Her eyes filled with tears. My blessing? You have all of it, dear. She engulfed them in a hug. I knew there was something between you from the first day. Sophie danced circles around them. Now you don't have to find suitors, Grandma. Indeed I don't. Helen beamed. My daughter did just fine on her own. She pulled back, still clutching their hands. You're coming to my party together, yes? Of course, Ben answered before Rachel could. Perfect. Just perfect. Helen wiped her eyes. Wait till I tell the knitting club. Mom, don't. Nonsense. Good news is meant to be shared. She handed out cookies. Celebrate, children. True love deserves chocolate. As Helen chattered about decorations, Ben watched Rachel try to smile and keep breathing at the same time. Sophie munched happily, clueless to the storm growing. When Helen finally left, Rachel collapsed in a chair. What have we done? Technically, Ben said. You wanted Sophie convinced. Mission accomplished. My mother will tell everyone, Rachel said. The knitting club, the church ladies, the manicurist, the mailman. By tomorrow the whole city will know. Isn't that good? Makes it look real. And in 3 weeks when we break up, what do we tell them? Rachel demanded. He hadn't thought that far. We'll come up with something. Irreconcilable differences. People break up all the time. But my mom will be devastated. Then we stretch it, he suggested. Another month or 2. However long it takes. This is getting out of control, she muttered. Sophie appeared with 3 plastic cups of orange juice, eyeing them critically. You two look tense for a couple in love, she declared. My teacher says people in love smile like idiots. You look like you just got an overdue electric bill. Ben laughed nervously. It's just all new. Then you need practice. Sophie set the cups down. Look at each other without looking scared. They faced each other, stared, and indeed looked terrified. Terrible, Sophie said. If you want to fool Grandma, you have to do better. Rachel blinked. Fool Grandma? I thought you believed this was real. Mom, I'm 8, not dumb, Sophie replied. You both turned bright red when you said it. People in love act goofy, not panicked. Ben and Rachel gaped. You knew. Rachel whispered. Of course. But it's fun. Like a live soap opera. Sophie shrugged. I'll help you. Just don't mess it up too badly. Ben met Rachel's eyes. Then they both burst out laughing. A hysterical, helpless laugh. They were being coached by an 8-year-old. Sophie sipped her juice satisfied. Over the next days they had to adjust to their new reality. Helen kept her promise. The news spread like wildfire. The cafe owner gave them discounts as the cutest couple in town. The hot dog guy waved with a knowing grin. A craft seller handed Rachel a heart-shaped keychain. For your sweetheart, she said.